if you go baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, Y, Z, alpha, right? The further as you go down that continuum, the younger you get, the greater the demand for wellness is expected, right? So the younger generations are absolutely expecting us to care for their well-being. They want to associate with brands that are well-minded, that care for that they know don't just care for them, but care for their colleagues, care for the planet along the way. We're going to be taken to task, and they simply won't tolerate anything less for themselves, other than a stay that at least maintains wherever their health is in the moment. And I think that really is something that you can't ignore for very long, no matter what kind of brand you are. It's better to get ahead of it, but some still ignore it.
We're delighted this week to have Mia Kyricos on our podcast. She's a Chief Love and Wellness Officer. And Mia, we really want to get straight into understanding what that means. Why are you a love officer?
Thank you for asking. It's because it's the kind of CEO I am. Back in the pandemic, I always had a theory, much like a business case for wellness years ago, that love is something that you could institutionalize as a business strategy, and I thought it could pay off. And so back when we were all quiet and in our own homes, isolated from one another, I went on a research project, and I learned, I really studied it. And at the end of the day, love might be an uncomfortable four-letter word, but it's all about positivity management and the real science behind it. And so I started looking at companies. I learned about positivity from Dr. Barbara Fredrickson. I studied different companies that seem to be implementing love, and there's many forms of it, in their business practices beyond just a marketing effort. And so it brought me to companies like Southwest Airlines, Prudential Insurance, and others. And to make a very long story short, I really proved it out, that those that institutionalized love and positivity management through things like managing to people's strengths, starting meetings off with what's going well, really taking the time to focus on the good that business is doing, really does pay off and down to the bottom line. So it gave me sort of the permission to unleash myself and change my title, and really embrace what a CLO could be. And it's a great icebreaker for people who want to know what that means. I love getting the question.
Very cool. And so prior to that, were you consulting in the same way? You just changed your title, or did your sort of business model change completely?
Well, exactly. To answer your question, I always would take leadership assessments. We've all been in companies that have assessed our strengths and so forth, and love would come up as a character strength in a variety of ways, and I felt sort of uncomfortable talking about it. And so part of it was pushing myself to be comfortable talking about it, because it's, I really ultimately care for your wellness and well-being in any job, whether I'm working for you, advising you, or others. And so that's really just a formalization of how I lead and how I really focus on the business of wellness and well-being. So I often say that the what is the business of wellness and well-being, and the how is love. And that's how I bring the two together in my work that I do today.
Super cool. I love that. And clearly it's something that resonates with people, because your resume of companies that you work for is pretty impressive. I mean, they're big household names, from Hyatt to Southwest Airlines. What enabled you to get your foot in the door with those guys, or what do you think resonated with your approach that, they were willing to speak to a love officer?
Well, I mean, humans have always been at the center of the work that we do. I've been really lucky. I've really set my roots in wellness-driven hospitality, spending time with companies like Starwood Hotels and Resorts, and Hyatt, leading spa, wellness, or well-being in a variety of ways, commercially, internally, often a combination of both. I very much consider myself to be a global citizen, and I learned that the best way to really meet business objectives, achieve, the performance that companies are seeking, is to really start with seeing people for who they are, even if we don't speak the same language or we aren't in the same geography. Really taking extra time to make the connections at every level of business. And I feel very lucky that I got to work with global companies that enabled me to do that, to travel around the world, to learn from different cultures, and really spend time connecting with the people first, then the title, then the company, then the work at hand. And I found that that was the best way to really achieve their objectives and also to learn about this amazing world that we all live in.
Super cool.
I mean, what you're describing really speaks to my kind of personal philosophy as well, because I feel like I was raised with a lot of attention of love and an open heart and feeling connected to like everyone in the world. And then building a business, starting a business, you start getting more into your head. And like you were saying, it's like, how do you, from your head, think you build a company, lead people? And then it's really for us during the pandemic, I kind of reconnected more with what I feel like my essence is, and really understanding that when you go in with an open heart, with your employees, with people, with clients, with projects, with the intention, it's a completely different energy and it really transforms everything. And I'm really grateful to have kind of reconnected with that. So when we were kind of researching about you and the word love came up, I was like, yeah, that's a real connection here.
Absolutely. And also with the work that you both do at Mendel and Meyer, because I think, architecture and design is so much about really tapping into the heartbeat of a place, of people, right? And so it's really critical, and I've learned this from some of the work we've done with developing wellness-driven communities and lifestyle real estate and all of those things. It's just so important to get the pulse. And I think traditional business practices, I'm going to say westernized business practices born from Wall Street, where we're supposed to cut off ourselves from the neck down and only use our head, really only got us so far. And I think the beauty of the pandemic is we were sort of forced to work in spaces that weren't designed for work. We didn't have to hang our other hats of being moms, daughters, community members, sisters, brothers. We wore all the hats, on screen with the dog and the cat and the Wi-Fi going down and the kids at home. And so it was one of the most sort of uncomfortable, vulnerable parts of the pandemic. But if you embraced it, became the most beautiful part. And I always say I would hate for anyone to have amnesia, because 2020 was one of the best learning years of my life. And the more I get away from it, all I see are the gifts of it. And I think I bring that to the work, and it gave us all permission to be who we are, right? And so I'm so grateful for that. It's been a game changer for me personally and professionally.
Yeah, I think that's true. We feel very much the same, that whilst it was a devastating tragedy, it really did open up a paradigm shift, a new way of working, thinking, being. You can just be yourself and people will accept you as you are. And it's been a bit of a shift from a business point of view, because you do find yourself accommodating different requirements. But if we try and do it, like you said, with love and just try and find that middle ground, we try not to cave into our team when we think it's not actually going to help them. So there's this desire to work from home, but our challenge is that you're going to be isolated. You're not going to be part of a community as much. So we encourage people to come into the office and, be part of that community, because we have a bit of an issue with work-life balance. Because if the balance part of your life is going home and spending 15 hours on Netflix, then that's not really balanced. That's doing something detrimental. So it's really just finding a positive balance when you're away from work.
Absolutely. And I also think two things that you just made me think of. One is it's operating more truthfully and feeling comfortable with speaking your truth, which has not always been an easy thing in business settings. And I always say that you can't build love or on a platform without trust, right? You have to trust one another. You have to trust each other. You need to feel comfortable and respected when you go against popular opinion. You have to trust that your leaders, your peers have your best interest at take it into account. So I think trust is a huge thing, and being able to speak your truth in business, which we haven't always been able to do. We tell our clients, our employers, what they want to hear versus what they need to hear, and same with our teams. And so that's one thing. And then the second thing you just mentioned about work-life balance, I was at an executive immersion last week, actually, with a great company called Ethos. They're actually headquartered in Phoenix, Arizona. And I used to work with them years ago. And they have a formula that I really respond to. They say that work used to be about work plus success equals rest. So after you worked really hard and after you achieved all those goals and quite honestly burnt yourself out, your reward was rest. Well, they flipped the formula and they say now work plus rest equals success. Taking those moments of recovery, whether it's an hour meeting, taking, 10 minutes between, shortening that, a 25-minute meeting or hour meeting to 50 minutes, building in little boosts of recovery, taking time to walk outside, step away from your desk when you're eating your lunch, all of these things. And it really sort of underscores my philosophy, which is you really do have to build in moments of recovery for ourselves and each other to be successful and in the 24/7 world that we all work in.
I mean, that was beautifully put. I feel like that's speaks totally to our ethos. And we actually have a policy where we're not, I don't want to say the word allow, because allow is it's not a good word, but we encourage people not to eat at their desks. It's just really take an hour for lunch, go outside. I think exposure to nature, to light, to just fresh air is so important. And like you were saying as well, for me, success really comes from when I take a pause and I step back and I see the big picture. Because when you're in the little rat race in your little silo and just thinking about just one thing, your mind can't expand and you don't come up with, especially for us, with really creative ideas and ideas that are bigger visions and they're moving things. And that's what we want to encourage our team as well. I love that model. It's a really good one.
Yes. And I love that how you set those principles for your team. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and I think that comes from because we've worked differently ourselves. We've been burned out. We've experienced kind of the old style way of working or leadership. And we really, when we set out our company, it was really important for us to turn that around. And it takes time, to find the right measure of offering love, but then also having still things in place, because if it's too loose, it's very hard for people to know working without being in a structure. So that balance was hard for us to find, but I feel like we're getting there.
That's great. Fantastic.
Yes, I think, and also the thing for me is it's not about becoming sort of passive and, floating through life. It's actually the opposite. It's giving people the best foundation to be the best versions of themselves and having power and energy and momentum and growth and finding fulfillment and taking those moments of pause I've really found important, which historically I wouldn't have done. I thought it was old school, work 60 hours a week. The more intense I'm working, the more I'm running around the office like a headless chicken, the more successful I'm going to be. And that doesn't result in success. It results in burnout and illness and disease.
Exactly. I couldn't say it better myself.
On the note of seeing how this has shifted, you've got so much experience in the wellness world, and I'd be curious to see what your experience is from what wellness used to be, like especially wellness and hospitality, and how it has transitioned and how this new way of thinking has really changed wellness well-being in hospitality. Yes.
Well, I think, years ago, and I think you all can relate, obviously, as architects and designers, that it used to be in hospitality, wellness was confined to spa, fitness, pool, right? That was really how it was defined. Forward-thinking entities might contemplate their food and beverage. It really wasn't until the last, I would say, 5 to 10 years, and really on the lower end of that, where wellness really came outside the four walls of the spa, where I say it was born, to really transcend all other aspects of the guest experience, but also design of the hotels, the space, how and most recently how colleague well-being is part of that proposition. I talk a lot about wellness and well-being, and I notice that you both do the same, that you do not, they're not synonymous, but they are related, right? I look at wellness as the personal steps we take to care for ourselves, and the business to help people do that, and well-being as the ultimate outcome we all seek that's dependent on many more things beyond just what we can control, things like the environment or political landscape, however that is, if there's a tsunami, weather events, those kinds of things that often take us off our wellness regimen, and we're always trying to sort of reclaim it. So what I find interesting is in hospitality specifically, the wellness conversation has gotten much broader, and the outcome of well-being has gotten much greater focus because we're realizing that it's really about an ecosystem of well-being that we're trying to manifest across our stakeholders, internally in our companies, but also externally to our consumers, the community, the planet that we call home. And so it's a much more connected conversation versus being compartmental as we used to look at it.
There's so much focus on it now, and wellness seems to be everywhere. I sort of liken it to people plastering protein numbers on the front of every food package. And we're very conscious of making sure that if somebody is trying to offer something wellness, it is truly, genuinely a positive to help somebody, and it's not just a way to leverage money from their wallet. The place I struggle with is, especially in hospitality, is that we know we've got destination wellness resorts, retreats, etc. It's more in the mainstream hospitality where some of the bigger brands are trying to leverage wellness. And I don't know what your experience is or how you think it can really positively input somebody who's just on a sort of one-night stay, transversing either for work or pleasure through that property.
I mean, I think you didn't use the word, but what you're speaking about is authenticity, right? How can you authentically and positively impact the well-being of a traveler who's not able to spend 4 to 7 nights at a place like Savannah that I know you all helped to design, and others. It's much more about what are the little touch points you could do, even quite authentically within a 3-star model that might not even have fitness center, pool, or otherwise, right? That's when design comes into account. That's when the little touch points of just, having a refillable water station so you can refill your water, making it easy for you to connect to the people that are important to you so the technology is good. That at the end of the day, hotels, particularly for single night stays, you're sleeping with them, right? They're selling a night's sleep. And so what is the bed? What's the air quality? What are the sheets made out of? Those kinds of things. There's so many ways. And the average person that has the intention and the motivation to really consider what happens before checkout all the way through, sort of check in to check out, there's so many opportunities to positively impact the health and well-being of a guest, and it doesn't require the guest spending any more money often. It's just that we have to have the willingness to be able to really look at that and how to impact their health and wellness meaningfully, even if they're with us for a very short while.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we're really interested in. Like you were saying, it's beautiful when you get the opportunity to design a true wellness resort where every single detail is thought through. What's really important for us in describing how we came kind of out of the pandemic of really defining like our purpose and bringing our purpose into work and almost using architecture and design more as the vehicle of what we feel like we can really be in service of, is to, with any project that we're touching, it's like you're saying, it doesn't have to cost more money, more time. It's just bringing that intention to it and designing something better than just in a very quick fashion. Just what's the intention? What's the little thing we can change that makes a difference? So I think those, yeah.
And I often say, if you don't have a big pocketbook and you don't have the ability to write a large check, it really does come down to intention and intuition. We just have to connect to what that experience will be for ourselves and what would we like, right? And if you really take the time to be mindful about it, you really can ignite, well-being in a way that is authentic and appropriate for that particular kind of stay. And it could be in the heart of Times Square for one night, right? It could be in on a street side suburbia. It's not just about the canyon ranches, the Miravals, the savannas, the Anandas, in the Himalayas, and all of that. It's much more practically for secondary travelers. And so whenever I talk about wellness, travel, and tourism, I say there's the primary wellness traveler that is typically, wellness is the purpose of their trip, and they are ideally, maybe they're booking a long stay, but their purpose is their health and wellness. But the much larger market, the much more consumer-driven market, is the secondary traveler that is traveling for business or leisure, or a combination of both, and would like to consume wellness or at least remain well while they're on the road. And that's the category of consumers that we really stand to impact. The opportunities are infinite. The big brands, as you suggested, are absolutely trying to crack that nut. But, it still amazes us, I'm sure, that we still stay at places where we don't feel like our well-being is cared for in the simplest of ways. And I think that's what we have to demystify.
And do you think, on that note, that there's a whole generation that's coming through that are going to absolutely demand that as a basic amenity that they're catered for?
Absolutely. I mean, if you drew a graph from, say, the boomers down through Gen X's, which is us, and by the way, I've been told we're irrelevant at this point, which is really sad, turning 50. I have another 50 years to go, but if you go baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, Y, Z, alpha, right? The further as you go down that continuum, the younger you get, the greater the demand for wellness is expected, right? So the younger generations are absolutely expecting us to care for their well-being. They want to associate with brands that are well-minded, that that they know don't just care for them, but care for their colleagues, care for the planet along the way. We're going to be taken to task, and they simply won't tolerate anything less for themselves, other than a stay that at least maintains wherever their health is in the moment. And I think that really is something that you can't ignore for very long, no matter what kind of brand you are. It's better to get ahead of it, but some still ignore it.
Yeah, but that's really interesting, because for me, that demand outweighs sometimes that question that you get, what's the ROI on it? Because we were saying that you can infuse wellness with, it doesn't cost a lot, but some stuff costs more money because it's better quality. It's technology infusing. So sometimes it does cost more money. And then the question, what's the ROI? But the demand is driving that. Do you still get a lot of those questions, and how do you answer it? What's your return on investment on certain strategies?
I actually, depending on audience, I have two different definitions for ROI. And it's for those that really do want to leave the world a better place, I use return on impact. How many are you really impacting every day, the quality of their life, and so forth? For those that are more skeptical, I say ROI is reciprocity on investment. And what I mean by that is if you care for people as they've cared for you, meaning they are loyal to your brand, they're coming, they're visiting, it is a continuous circle where you each take care of one another. And so while it's not straight line math all the time with a pro forma that you can prove the payoff in 5 to 7 years, the reciprocity that comes from brand loyalty, from word of mouth, from coming back repeatedly, from bringing your friends when you do that, it really is a reciprocal relationship. And so those are the contexts that I now talk about ROI. I definitely think, when we have clients come to us at Kyricos and Associates, we typically categorize them in one of two buckets. Our sweet spot is helping companies to leverage wellness as a strategic differentiator, whether commercially, internally, and increasingly a combination of both. But I usually can say, are you coming to develop and launch a product, a platform, a property, a program? Are you trying to check that box and be done? That's one category group. And that's okay, but let's just know that up front. Or the other bucket is, are you trying to make well-being part of your DNA? Who you are, how you show up, the goals that you set. That is a very different path, and that runway, whenever it comes to ROI, I'm like, nope, you're not in the right bucket, you're in this other bucket. I rip that up because that's about doing sort of the right thing and understanding that the runway is infinite, like a vision statement. It's always your North Star, but you never really quite reach it, right?
Yep.
That is part of the really making wellness and well-being part of a DNA versus launching a product, a platform, a property, a program. And that question always stuns people, or when I share how I'm categorizing the clients, it sort of throws them off. But it really levels the expectation right up front of what are you really hoping to achieve. In either one, by the way, it's no judgment. Either one is perfectly okay, but they have very different implementation plans. And so that's the kind of conversation that we have. And I would say, the traditional ROI is easier to size when you are trying to check that box versus make it part of your DNA. So that's my ruler, and it's been very helpful in terms of contextualizing projects for clients and for us.
That's very helpful to hear that description. Did ever anyone come to you that was on the box checking and then through the process has developed into, no, it's actually our DNA and something else came out of it?
Yes, in fact. And I will say that the company that did that is one of my former employers, who I was with until the pandemic, was Hyatt Hotels. So really got a call from the C-suite, and here I was flying back and forth to Chicago thinking I was negotiating the potential of a consulting engagement. And as I shared sort of my thinking around what wellness and well-being could mean and what the sheer potential was for a global hotel company, after about 6 months of conversations, they issued me a 4-page job description. And it really talked about, it was the first time of really any sort of Fortune 1000 company thought about putting a single leader responsible for wellness and well-being, both commercially, so what happens at hotels and in between hotel stays, and internally for 150,000 colleagues worldwide. And keep in mind, historically, the wellness-driven conversations have been really disparate in corporate companies, right? The workplace wellness might be handled by HR. Your planetary well-being might be in legal under ESG. If you have products and services, it's under a chief commercial officer. It's all sort of fragmented and actually quite costly when you have different people that aren't really speaking to each other leading all those functions. And so it was the first time that I was sort of given this landscape to think about it truly holistically. And instead of having just someone that was responsible for wellness commercially, which is what I initially thought we were talking about, and they wanted to sort of check the box, we looked at it much more holistically, really through a dialogue of sharing ideas and having that conversation of where that could go. And it was one of the reasons why I paused the work of my company and actually went to join the company and reported into the C-suite because I believed that they saw the potential, and they did, and it was wonderful, to make wellness part of their DNA, and our handprint is still there. So it's been really rewarding work to see that mentality can work, and you can shift from just a check-the-box exercise on a consulting engagement on a project to something that's much more part of the fabric of a company.
That's a great example. And I feel like that really came down to how you were guiding through that process and kind of open up that opportunity and that vision as well to go further and deeper.
Yeah, it really was. And it was fantastic. And it was almost like I had my own petri dish of a test, and it's the mentality now that we bring to all of our clients. And I'm able to really synthesize what we're looking for. And for us, it's very differentiating because I'm personally not a lifelong consultant. I've sort of ebbed and flowed during this purposeful work to help people live well. And having owned the P&L and then also be on the advising side, it makes our advice go further, I think, because I know what it's like to actually have to report on the ROI side, but ultimately make it part of the DNA side. So
I like going back to your ROI. I like your two analogies, because wellness is like a bit like that, isn't it? There isn't one size fits all, and it's often a long-term play. You know, fitting well or having good well-being is, like you say, it's either a destination, but it takes continuous effort and improvement. And so companies setting off with that mindset, there is no immediate end result or goal. It's like you said, it's factored into their DNA for the long term, which then starts to resonate out through their brand and builds brand loyalty from their customers.
yes, and then decisions start to make themselves, right? Suddenly you stop having to fight or make the business case for wellness and well-being. Suddenly the decisions on whether to do something or not to do something, which is really sort of anchored in the purpose, becomes much easier. Of course, we should offer healthier food options in our staff cafeterias. Of course, we should think about what our footprint's going to be in the community. Of course, we should reconsider how, the health of the rooms that we're designing, or the FF&E that we're actually bringing to life, furniture, fixtures, and equipment for anyone who's listening, that we're bringing into a space, right? So that's where you start realizing that progress is being made, because those decisions are easy decisions to make versus, business cases to present and advocate for and hope that someone's going to endorse. And we start wasting a lot less time and doing a lot more purposeful work. And that's when you start to realize that, wow, we're doing something. We are going from the check the box to making this much more part of our ethos, our DNA, our gene expression.
And with wellness being so, I hate the word trendy right now, or at the forefront, how are you responding to people wanting to shoehorn some items into their properties or their culture that you feel are just sort of gimmicks and they don't really impact people's wellness or well-being?
This is something that we face a lot, and the rulers we typically use is we really look at any wellness strategy, product, or service that you want to be inherent to a brand needs to be mapped to the parent's brand and business objectives, who they are, right? It doesn't make sense for Enterprise Rent-A-Car, which is phenomenal, and I rent from them when I need to provide all the luxury finishes that you might find from, a car that you purchase, for example, right? We have to be comfortable with who we are as brands and make sure that whatever we bring to life on the wellness side is suitably part of that. It's reinforcing to who that brand is. And so anytime we look at it, we really try to distinguish what is the brand's core values that they're trying to bring to life, and how can we further underscore them with our wellness strategy. And oftentimes we get into a brand strategy conversation that needs to be built out, and then we build that back into it, because the wellness side back into it, because you have to be very clear in today's market about who you are as a brand that you're offering in the marketplace. And then the wellness strategy has to really live happily within that. And so if you're using the right brand ruler, it's easier to see what you should do and shouldn't do, and what's gimmicky versus long lasting. And so that's the measure that we use. Oftentimes, I'm sure you feel the same way. And a great example of this is if you're developing a spa in Greece, and you're trying to bring in Asian modalities, right? That doesn't always fit. It doesn't suit, right? Unless you can find a real connection. That's not something we'd recommend. Or, I remember I was in Korea doing a site evaluation in Seoul for a W hotel that had a spa, and they were very, very focused on providing Ayurveda. And I couldn't understand, why they wanted to do that when they had beautiful Korean indigenous offerings. It's actually one of the strongest massages I've ever received in my life. It's unbelievable. And so really helping them to realize, hey, Ayurveda might be a really cool thing that people are starting to really dig into, but that's not appropriate for this sense of place, for what you're trying to bring to life. And I think that's what we have to always do, is almost hold a mirror up to them to make sure, do you know who you are, before you're backing a wellness or well-being initiative into it.
That's a really nice way you're describing it, because you were saying you start more with what the company, the brand, the property is about. So it's like finding their unique essence and then amplifying that essence through wellness tools and initiatives. Because then, like you were saying, that's
Exactly.
how the authenticity comes through it. Yeah, I think that's a really nice way of describing it, to understand how can anyone be in wellness, but how do you make it true to you and what works for your location, for example, as well. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, unless you're a wellness company, offering wellness for wellness sake is not the right strategy. Offering wellness and well-being because it's core to who you are, or it's part of how your brand cares for people or shows up, is a much more authentic path. It keeps everyone honest.
Yeah, and like we were saying earlier about it, really the intention with it as well. I don't think it has the same outreach if it's just something that's added on that doesn't really you can identify with.
Exactly.
I'm always curious on the wellness and well-being side, what are the kind of newer emerging trends or movements you see that are maybe like soft trends now that are still coming? I'm kind of personally always curious about those insights.
Sure. So, no, I mean, I think this is going to sound trendy because I think it's the wellness-related buzzword of 2024 is longevity.
Yeah.
Right? Longevity, longevity, longevity. If you take the language out of it, what that ultimately means is historically we felt that medical and wellness offerings each had their own place, right? If you were going to keep the medical folks on the medical side of the equation, the wellness folks on the wellness side, and what that means is those that cure and react to symptoms are in one camp, and those that help to extend life and prevent lifestyle disease are in another camp. What's happening now is that you are seeing hospitality really serve as a venue where these two entities can better intersect. And historically, particularly as you got up to the 4-star, 5-star, more luxury side of the equation, consumers would only trust their doctors at home, and when they were going to a spa, they just wanted to do more of the relaxing maintenance, services. Today, there are entities that are really contemplating how to partner with hospitality companies that can offer a high level of service. And then the offering on the wellness and well-being side is true holistic care, like the whole spectrum, from really assessing the whole person, what they have going on from a condition standpoint, gene expression, whatever, to things that they'd like to do to prevent or maintain their well-being. It's increasingly under one roof. And so I think you're going to see lots of fun different models, a lot of experimentation where these longevity brands are going to find ways to try to partner, even if it's renting space and being a third party, or becoming dedicated centers as part of hospitality footprints to bring really cater to longevity in a meaningful way, spanning the medical and wellness continuum. That's something I'm seeing a lot. The other thing I would say is really big is I think we're having a much better understanding of how food and beverage affects our health and well-being and what might be good for me to eat versus you to eat. People are getting much more conscious about how their food's being sourced and what gives them energy, what actually affects their performance, what sensitivities they may have, and so forth. And so I think that's spawning a lot of innovation in food and food science and hospitality as well. And I also think design. I think we are, and this is obviously speaking to experts in the room with Mendel and Meyer, but I think we're so much more conscious, increasingly conscious of how our environment affects our health and well-being. And so I don't just mean the natural environment, but the built environment. And so I think that is something, those three areas, longevity, food and beverage, and then wellness design as it relates to the environments that we spend so much of our time in, whether that's hospitality or at home or where we work, is increasingly spawning a lot of innovation as well.
I'm looking forward to the future. I like those pillars.
Yeah, it sounds great. I guess there's an additional piece to add to that, so the education around it too, isn't there? So people that are really unaware that there's an opportunity, and that's where I think even the casual traveler passing through your hotel, there's an opportunity for education there, that somehow helping them get a better night's sleep. We think of sleep as being the most important pillar of your physical wellness routine. You know, a good night's sleep changes everything, or the other way around, a bad night's sleep changes everything. So we always think about hotel rooms as somewhere you're going to sleep. So let's make sure they're engineered for sleep.
Absolutely. And I mean, let's be honest, the hotel room historically and frankly still today, as I was just stayed at a hotel last week for 3 nights, or earlier this week for 3 nights, have notoriously been horrible places to sleep. I mean, we're selling sleep as a primary product, but the 3 things that affect a good night's sleep, number 1 is actually light. Number 2 is temperature, and number 3 is noise. So the average consumer thinks it's just noise. But the reality is you need to sleep in a dark, cool place with consistent noise, like a white noise, or no noise at all. And you still, I'm amazed at how we get this wrong. The light piece, you know, you have your glowing alarm clock on the nightstand. You have the exit sign that somehow is glowing underneath your door. You have this lighting that they think is really cool when you get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. For some reason, you can't shut it off when you're going to bed. You know, there's number of things that make me crazy that I actually spend time taking the hand towels and the face cloths and covering things before I go to bed. And I always now travel with a sleep mask. And I'm consistently trying to figure out how to get the temperature down to, you know, optimal sleeping temperatures between 65 and 68 degrees. I like 60 myself at home. So I'm always trying to figure out how to bring it down. I know you're in Arizona. It's hard to imagine. I'm in Maine, so we like it cold. So, you know, these are the things that it's amazing how the evidence and science behind what keeps us well has actually been on the rise, and yet we still have not applied this information to the design of these hospitality entities. And so, in a word, it's opportunity. We have lots of opportunity.
I think that's a good point, because that speaks to getting the fundamentals right, doesn't it? If you think about sleep, exercise, and nutrition, yet through clever marketing, people latch onto the cure-all. It's the cold plunge, it's the infrared, it's the magic diet pill.
Injection.
Exactly. So we're always conscious of that, and thinking about, when we're going back to authenticity, of really helping people understand what is really going to make the most difference to your life. And those things I think are great, and they're great add-ons to an already well-established wellness routine. But just thinking that cold plunging every day is going to change your life when you eat terribly, drink a lot, don't get enough sleep, don't do any exercise, it's not the answer. But clever marketing suggests it is.
Exactly. And I think there's a huge opportunity still for us to all be better partners to our consumers by educating them on the way. Did you know, fill in the blank? Did you know, I've had friends that have sleep disturbances, particularly around our age, right? I'm 49 and going through midlife, and as a woman, you have perimenopause and menopause and all of these things. And so suddenly they start thinking they have sleep disturbances, right? And so they're not contemplating how they're eating, how they're sleeping, if they're moving, and so forth. And they are thinking about their hormonal health, which is good, but did they contemplate, the blue light that they were getting before they went to sleep? Or, are they really thinking about if they're hydrated? They're going to grab the sleep aid that we can get at our local pharmacy and take a sleeping pill, right? Versus really understanding root cause and some of the behaviors that we can influence to actually mitigate that. So what I find really interesting is, despite all of the information and evidence that's out there now, and arguably I agree it's too much coming at us, and saying wellness every left and right, I feel like that we make. But we're still not in complete control or our understanding of what actually does affect our health and well-being. And so the education piece is huge. It's something that we all can stand to get better at, and certainly brands can serve as a better partner by just even very shortly saying, hey, we've designed the room for this. You know, we've created this program for this. Did you know this? It's free. The information's free, but how can we make sure that consumers have a much better understanding of what really is affecting their health and
Yeah.
well-being?
I mean, that almost makes me think about how traditionally in design, hotels were always an aspiration for how you want your home and house to look. And then it kind of like switched almost now, bring the residential visually into the hotel. When you were describing the wellness aspect, it makes me feel like for people that might not have the opportunity to be exposed to wellness education, that hotels can play a role, like you're saying, of opening people's eyes to certain modalities, and then you bring it actually home or back into your lifestyle. So I think that's a, yeah.
Absolutely. Back in I think it was 2015, I had the good fortune to actually to help define what wellness travel and wellness tourism was. I think the first report came out from the Global Wellness Institute in 2013. And, you know, yours truly wrote the definition about what wellness travel and tourism was, which was travel designed to positively impact your health and well-being, no matter where you were going. But around 2015, 2016, we started seeing this is going to shift from places where people want to visit to places where they call home. And so what are the criteria, the elements that they're going to want to bring home with them? And sure, there was a group of us, and I'm sure you're all included, that sort of saw that path early on, but many still aren't able to be exposed, as you said, to some of the wellness travel destinations that would inspire you to want to bring those home. And so figuring out how we can educate people that in a much more mass market consumer, make wellness and well-being much more approachable and accessible to the average person, help to educate them, help to manifest opportunities for them to also, you know, feel empowered to care for their own well-being. That is the work that is yet to be done. We still have to bring it more, I don't want to say downstream, I'm going to say across the ocean, right? It's literally leveling for everyone to be able to access.
That's one of our whys or purposes, is to empower people to be the best version of themselves for the benefit of humanity, because we generally feel that if people are in their best peak state, that's going to have a positive effect on the people around them, and it's just a ripple effect in a positive way. And it's so true that it shouldn't just be for the elite that can go and afford a stay at Canyon Ranch or some other exotic destination, but that should also be aspirational. Maybe you start not being able to afford something like that, but through progress in your own wellness and well-being, you now change your life in a different trajectory, and now you are staying there.
I'm actually, what I'm most excited about is about democratizing this, and I know that's a very cliche term to say, but we get contacted all the time about the person that wants to create the next wellness social club, or the next 5-star destination. I mean, and to be honest with you, many times it makes me want to yawn, because there's not a greater purpose to it, or it's for the top 0.5%, of the world's population. I get excited about the projects that feel like it's for me, it's for you, it's for my mom, it's for my dad, it's for my younger sisters, my niece, my nephew. Simple things are places that they can all feel like they could be a part of. That's why when I think about how we've shifted to wellness communities and lifestyle real estate, really thinking about how we can just make our own homes, our own zip codes, our schools, our hospitals, places where we spend our time, our churches, more that's the thing I get excited about. That's what I want to help to bring to life, because there's no reason why we can't do that in a cost-effective way for every single person on this planet. And that's the thing that inspires me to keep going and doing this work. So for anyone who's listening, who's funding projects for the average person, that's the kind of work I want to help get more involved in, because we've done a very good job of caring for the health and well-being of the people that honestly need it the least. And that's where we need to really chart the course forward.
That's a beautiful mission, Mia, and it really speaks to your connection to the heart and love as well.
Thank you.
So, as you shared, you're turning 50 very soon. So what's the next 50 years look like for Mia?
I have a very clear purpose, and it's to help people live well, to show up for the people that I love, and to have fun while doing it. Because we can't forget that we're on this planet for a very short amount of time. And so the next 50 years is going to be doing that. Those three things, if it's on my tombstone when I'm 6 feet under, whenever that ends up being, that would make me feel like I lived a well life. As helping others to live well, showing up for those that I love, and to have fun while doing it. And that third part is going to be the important part for me. It's where I'm going to focus on the second half, because I've worked really hard, and sometimes I've lost the forest for the trees, because being passionate, filled people, you have to keep yourself in check. And so that's why I say yes to crazy things like my husband saying, hey, do you want to completely turn your work schedule upside down so I can take you to Greece for your birthday? And I was like, oh, it's not a good time. And then I just decided, what are the work things that are going to get cut out, not the life things that are going to get cut out. And that's what I used to do for the first 50 years. And I'm done doing that. So that's my mission. And I hope, I say my goal, I used to say was 100. Now I say it's 120. So I can live 100 years of feeling really well. Why shoot so low? Let's shoot higher. And that's it, really.
Well, speaking with you today, you can really feel that passion and purpose, and it feels completely genuine, and it's not wrapped up in trends or, the current excitement around wellness. It is genuinely trying to help people. So we really appreciate you talking to us about that and sharing your amazing vision and expertise.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for having me, and for, living and doing the work as well. I mean, I was fascinated when I was going through all of your projects, some of which I had known, like Savannah and others. And so I just love that we're all members of the same tribe, and that we get to do this work together. So thank you.
Very grateful to have you today, Mia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.